Most people never use more than a fraction of their own minds, and that is why they lose. Winners, on the other hand, learn to use the hidden power within, and it changes everything. In this lesson, I'm going to show you the power of the mind that separates winners from losers. You'll learn why thoughts are not idle but seeds that grow into success or failure depending on what you plant. You'll see how drifting, conformity, and wrong attitudes trap the majority in failure, while discipline, persistence, and service lift the minority into success. Most importantly, you'll discover how to take control of your own mind so that you never drift, never fail by accident, and always move deliberately toward the life you want. Think about this. We all know people who seem to work hard all their lives, and yet they never get ahead. We also know others, sometimes with less ability, who seem to rise, who always move forward, who live in freedom while others remain stuck. Why is this so? It is not chance, not talent, not background. It is the way they think. Winners use their minds as tools, directing them toward goals, guarding them against weeds, persisting until results appear. Losers neglect their minds, letting fear, doubt, envy, and conformity take root. And life, as it always does, reflects those thoughts back in perfect measure. That is why the power of the mind is the dividing line between success and failure. Once you see this, you'll never again wonder why some succeed and others fail. You'll know. In the next 45 minutes, we'll uncover the power of the mind that separates winners from losers. We'll begin with the great tragedy of drifting, how most lives end in failure because people never take control of their own thoughts. We'll look at the roots of failure, wrong thinking, conformity, and poor attitudes, and see how they work silently, inevitably, to destroy potential. Then we'll turn to the power of directed thought, the truth that we become what we think about, and how clear goals, persistence, and service transform lives. Finally, we'll see the ultimate reward, the freedom and fulfillment that come when you use your mind deliberately, as it was designed to be used. Stay with me, because once you understand how your mind decides success or failure, you'll have the key to separate yourself from the 95% who drift and join the 5% who win. Here's something most people never stop to think about, and yet it explains more about success and failure than almost anything else you could ever learn. Imagine 100 young men, all starting life at the age of 25. Every one of them is full of hope, full of energy, full of plans. Each one believes that by the time he reaches 65, he'll have made it. Ask them if they want to succeed, and almost every hand would go up. Ask if they plan to fail, and not one would admit it. Every single one intends to live well, to be secure, to enjoy the fruits of his work. And yet, here is the tragedy. By the time those 100 men reach 65, only 5 will have succeeded. Only 1 will be rich. 4 will be financially independent. 5 will still be working because they have to. And 54 will be broke, dependent on family, on government, on chance. 95 out of 100 will have failed. Now stop and let that sink in. 95% will fail. Only 5% will succeed. And here's the striking part. Not one of them planned it this way. Not one ever said, "I hope to end my life broke and dependent." They all began with the same bright hope, the same conviction that they would do well. Yet the overwhelming majority failed. So the question we must ask is obvious, and it cuts deep. Why? Why do so many fail and so few succeed? If success were only a matter of luck, then the numbers should be more balanced. If success were only a matter of talent, then the percentages would be different, but they are not. Generation after generation, across every country, across every culture, the numbers remain the same. 95% fail, 5% succeed. Think of it like this. If a ship sets out to sea without a captain, without a chart, without a destination, what will happen? Will it ever arrive safely in port? Of course not. It will drift with the wind and the current until it runs aground or breaks apart. No one would expect otherwise. And yet, that is exactly how most people live their lives. They set out into the years without a clear destination. They drift with the crowd. They follow whatever current happens to move them, and like the ship without a chart, they end in wreckage. It isn't accident. It isn't fate. It is the natural result of drifting. The stakes could not be higher. For to drift is to waste the most precious thing you have, your life. Time once gone cannot be reclaimed. Opportunity once missed cannot be retrieved. Potential once neglected turns into regret. The 95% lose not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked direction. They failed not by choice, but by default. Now here's the thought that should never leave you. If the vast majority fail, and only a few succeed, then failure is predictable. It comes by law, not by chance. And if failure is predictable, then so is success. Just as drifting inevitably ends in wreckage, direction inevitably ends in arrival. And that means that if we can understand what causes the 95% to fail, we can also understand what the 5% do differently to succeed. And that is where we must go next. For the real tragedy is not simply that 95% fail, it is that most of them never knew why. They thought they were doing the right thing. They thought they were safe by following the crowd. They thought drifting was living, and yet drifting is dying in slow motion. So let us look closer and see why most fail without even knowing it. If you want to understand why so many people fail, you must first understand the condition of their minds. The mind is the most fertile field ever given to man, and it will grow anything you plant in it. It does not question, it does not judge, it does not choose. It accepts what is sown, and it returns it in abundance. If you plant wheat, you will harvest wheat. If you plant weeds, you will harvest weeds. And if you plant nothing at all, weeds will grow anyway, because nature abhors a vacuum. This is the great law, and it applies to thought as surely as it applies to the soil. Whatever dominates your thinking, whatever you allow to take root and grow in your mind, will sooner or later become your life. That is why I call wrong thinking the first root of failure. It is the weed that grows naturally if nothing else is planted, and it is the weed that chokes out every possibility of success. Think of the man who begins each day with worry. Before he even rises from bed, his first thought is of the bills he cannot pay, the debts that weigh upon him, the problems that face him. He dwells upon them as he dresses, as he travels to work, as he moves through the day. His mind becomes a garden of weeds filled with fear, with doubt, with resentment. And because his thoughts are weeds, his actions mirror them. He hesitates when courage is needed. He doubts when faith is called for. He complains instead of creating. He resents others instead of learning from them. Slowly, his life begins to reflect his thoughts. His worries become realities. His fears become his future. And he ends in failure not because fate cursed him, but because he cursed himself with the seeds he planted in his own mind. Now think of another man facing the same circumstances. He too has debts. He too has problems, but he does not dwell upon them. Instead, he asks, "What can I do today to improve? How can I serve better? What step can I take to move forward?" His thoughts are seeds of growth. He fills his mind with the vision of improvement, with gratitude for what he has, with faith in what can be. And because his thoughts are seeds of growth, his actions reflect them. He saves instead of spends. He studies instead of wastes time. He takes courage where others shrink. And slowly, his life begins to mirror his thoughts. His opportunities increase, his wealth grows, his confidence strengthens. He succeeds not by chance, but by law. This is why I say wrong thinking is the greatest cause of failure. It requires no effort. It grows naturally in the mind left unattended. Fear, doubt, envy, resentment, they spring up like weeds in any neglected field. They do not need to be planted. They come uninvited, but once they take root, they spread and they choke out everything else. And most men, never realizing that their minds are gardens, never realizing that they must be tended, allow the weeds to grow. They let fear dominate their thoughts, resentment color their days, envy poison their hearts, and in the end, they harvest exactly what they planted. They live the bitter fruit of their own neglected minds. So let me ask you, what are you planting in your own mind? What seeds are you sowing each day? Are you filling your thoughts with fear of what might go wrong, or with faith in what you can make right? Are you dwelling on resentment toward others, or gratitude for your own opportunities? Are you feeding your mind weeds, or are you feeding it wheat? For as surely as the harvest follows the seed, your life will follow your thoughts. And now we must look at another cause of failure, one that grows side by side with wrong thinking, one that keeps more men in poverty and failure than any other single force. It is the trap of conformity, the tendency to follow the crowd, to think what others think, to live as others live, never realizing that the crowd is almost always wrong, and that is where we must go next. Here's a truth that may sound harsh at first, but once you see it, it will never leave you. Most people don't fail because they set out to. They fail because they never set out at all. Failure is not some great catastrophe that strikes suddenly from the outside. It's not an accident of fate, and it's not caused by bad luck alone. Failure is quiet, it's subtle. It's the sum of small neglects repeated day after day, year after year, until the years are gone, and a man looks back and wonders where his life went. That is why most people fail without even knowing it, because they drift along, thinking they are safe, thinking they are doing what's expected, thinking they are living as they should, when in reality they are squandering the only life they will ever have. Picture this. One man gets up each day because the alarm clock tells him to. He goes to work because it's Monday, because it's what everyone else does, because he has bills to pay. He comes home, eats, turns on the television, and goes to bed. Tomorrow he repeats the same. At the end of the week he collects a paycheck, spends it as quickly as it came, and waits for the next. He tells himself he's living, but what he's really doing is marking time. He is not directing his life, he is letting life direct him. He has no chart, no compass, no goal. He is like the ship drifting at sea, certain only of one thing, that the current will carry him wherever it wishes, and in the end he will fail not by choice, but by neglect. Now picture another man beginning in the same place. He too wakes each morning, but before his feet touch the floor he knows why he's getting up. He has a goal, something definite, something worthy. His work is not just a way to pass time, it's a step toward that goal. He too has bills, he too faces obstacles, but he is moving in a direction. Each day adds up. Each effort builds upon the last. His life, like a ship with a charted course, moves steadily toward its destination. Years later he arrives, not by accident, but because he chose his course and stayed upon it. He succeeds not because he was luckier or more talented, but because he directed his mind while the other man neglected his. And this is the lesson. Winners direct their minds, losers let theirs drift. Winners decide upon a goal, guard their thoughts, and take daily steps toward it. Losers wait for life to decide for them. They spend their days reacting instead of creating, conforming instead of deciding, excusing instead of directing. And in the end, they arrive exactly where the 95% always arrive, broke, dependent, and filled with regret. The danger of this truth is that it happens so quietly. No one notices it in the moment. No one wakes up one day and declares, "I'm choosing failure." It happens in the small decisions, the unchecked thoughts, the days spent waiting instead of building. And that is why most people fail without knowing it. They confuse busyness with progress. They confuse motion with direction. They confuse conformity with safety. And by the time they realize the difference, the years are gone. So remember this, drifting is easy, and that is why most people do it. But drifting always ends in failure. Direction is harder, it requires effort, it demands thought, but it always ends in success. And if you can see that, if you can understand why most fail without knowing it, then you already have the beginning of wisdom. Now we must go deeper. For if failure is predictable, then what exactly causes it? What are the roots that feed it, the weeds that grow in the minds of the 95% until they strangle all hope of success? That is what we must uncover next, the root causes of failure, so that you can see them for what they are and refuse to let them grow in your own mind. If wrong thinking is the seed of failure, then conformity is the climate that allows it to grow unchecked. Conformity is the silent agreement most people make with the majority, the unspoken decision to follow the crowd, to think what others think, to do what others do, to live as others live. And because the crowd almost always fails, those who conform share the same fate. This is one of the greatest tragedies of life. Men and women who could think for themselves, who could choose their own course, surrender their greatest power in order to feel safe, in order to belong, in order to avoid the discomfort of standing alone. And so they fail, not because they are incapable of success, but because they have chained themselves to the 95% who always fail. Conformity feels safe. There is comfort in numbers. There is reassurance in doing what everyone else is doing. If the crowd is buying, you buy. If the crowd is complaining, you complain. If the crowd is drifting, you drift with them. It feels normal, it feels secure, but it is a false security. For if the crowd is heading over a cliff, what comfort is there in being in the middle of it? If the crowd is failing, then to follow them is to guarantee your own failure. This is the trap of conformity. It does not ask you to think. It does not require you to choose. It only asks that you go along. And because most people do, they share the destiny of the majority. Let me give you a picture. A man works at a job he despises. He spends years at it, never liking it, never growing in it, never improving himself. When asked why, he shrugs and says, "Well, everyone has to work somewhere. This is what people do. This is what life island." He accepts his dissatisfaction because he sees others doing the same. He never questions whether there could be another way. He never asks himself what he truly wants, or what goal could give his life meaning. He simply conforms. And in the end, he has what conformity always produces: failure, dependence, regret. Another man, beginning in the same place, asks different questions. What do I want my life to be? What service can I render? What goal can I set that will give me direction? He refuses to conform. He dares to think for himself. He dares to choose his own course. And because he does, his life takes on a different shape. He rises while others sink. He succeeds while others fail. This is why I say conformity is the opposite of courage. It is easy. It is popular. It is accepted. But it requires nothing of a man, and it gives nothing in return. Courage, on the other hand, requires thought. It requires decision. It requires the willingness to stand apart from the 95%, to set a different course, to choose a different destiny. Most men lack that courage, and so they conform. They drift with the crowd. They live outer-directed lives, waiting for circumstances to tell them what to do. And in the end, they arrive where the crowd always arrives, broke, dependent, and bitter. So remember this: if you think as the crowd thinks, you will live as the crowd lives. If you do what the crowd does, you will end as the crowd ends, and the crowd always ends in failure. But if you would succeed, if you would live in freedom and fulfillment, you must refuse to conform. You must dare to think for yourself, to set your own goal, to plant your own thoughts, to chart your own course, for only then can you escape the fate of the 95% who will always fail. And this brings us to the great truth that separates the crowd from the few. If wrong thinking and conformity create failure, then right thinking and independence must create success. And the law that makes this possible is simple, powerful, and unchanging. It is the strangest secret. We become what we think about. And that is where we must go next. Now we come to the law that explains both success and failure. The law that is as certain as gravity, as consistent as the sunrise, and yet is ignored by nearly everyone. The law is simple. We become what we think about. That is the strangest secret, and it is the dividing line between winners and losers. For a man's life is nothing more than the outward expression of his inward thoughts. Whatever dominates the mind will, sooner or later, dominate the life. This is not speculation, this is not philosophy, it is law. And it is the very law that explains why 95% fail and why 5% succeed. The 95 think thoughts of fear, doubt, resentment, and limitation, and they live lives of fear, doubt, resentment, and limitation. The 5 think thoughts of growth, service, vision, and contribution, and they live lives that reflect growth, service, vision, and contribution. Each becomes what he thinks about, and no one escapes the law. Picture 2 men starting from the same place, in the same town, working the same job. On the surface, they are identical, but inside, they are worlds apart. One man dwells on lack. He tells himself, life is hard, that opportunity is scarce, that the system is unfair, that nothing ever works out for him. His mind is filled with weeds, and because his thoughts are weeds, his life becomes weeds. He hesitates when chances come. He complains when things go wrong. He envies others when they succeed. And as the years pass, his life shrinks to match his thoughts. The other man chooses differently. He fills his mind with vision. He tells himself he can grow, he can learn, he can serve, he can create value. His mind is filled with wheat, and because his thoughts are wheat, his life becomes wheat. He studies while others waste time. He saves while others spend carelessly. He takes courage when others retreat. And as the years pass, his life expands to match his thoughts. Two men, same beginning, different thinking. 20 years later, their lives are unrecognizable from one another. The difference was not chance, not luck, not talent. The difference was thought. This is why I say, your thoughts are not idle. They are not harmless, they are seeds. Each one contains within it the power to shape your destiny. Think failure, and you are sowing the seed of failure. Think success, and you are sowing the seed of success. Think resentment, and you are sowing the seed of bitterness. Think gratitude, and you are sowing the seed of peace. Think lack, and you are sowing the seed of poverty. Think abundance, and you are sowing the seed of wealth. The harvest will come. It may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but it will come as surely as the seasons. And when it comes, it will be in exact proportion to the seeds you have sown in your mind. So let me ask you, what are you allowing to dominate your thoughts? Are you filling your mind with worry about what you cannot control? Are you dwelling on the envy of what others have? Are you replaying past failures, convincing yourself they will repeat? Or are you planting the seeds of vision, of purpose, of gratitude, of service? For the difference between winners and losers lies right here, in the quiet, unseen realm of thought. Winners think deliberately, losers think carelessly. Winners choose what to plant. Losers let weeds grow by neglect. And life, faithful and unchanging, mirrors both with perfect accuracy. And here is the conclusion we cannot escape. If we become what we think about, then we must direct our thinking. We cannot leave it to chance. We cannot allow weeds to grow unchecked. We must give the mind a compass, a chart, a definite direction. For only then will our thoughts lead us towards success instead of drifting back into failure. And that brings us to the next truth, the power of a definite goal. For a goal is what separates deliberate thought from drifting thought. It is the compass that turns seeds into harvest, thoughts into results, winners into winners. And that is where we must go next. If it is true that we become what we think about, and it is, then the question naturally follows, what shall we think about? What image shall we hold before the mind each day until it shapes the course of our lives? The answer is a definite goal. A goal is to the mind what a compass is to the traveler, what a chart is to a ship, what a map is to the explorer. Without it, you drift. Without it, you waste time and energy in aimless motion. Without it, you fall into the 95% who fail, because they never chose to succeed. But with it, everything changes. The moment you set a clear, definite, and worthy goal, your thoughts have direction, your energy has focus, your efforts have meaning. You stop drifting and start moving. And from that moment on, success is no longer a matter of chance, it becomes a matter of time. Picture a ship leaving harbor. If it has a captain, a crew, a charted course, and a destination, you can be certain it will arrive. Storms may slow it, winds may blow it off course, obstacles may delay it, but because it has direction, it will reach its port. Now picture another ship leaving the same harbor with no captain, no crew, no chart, no destination. Where will it go? Nowhere. It will drift until it sinks. And that is exactly what happens to most people. They set out in life without a goal, without a destination, without a chart. They drift with the current of the crowd, and in the end, they wreck. A goal is the difference between arrival and wreckage, between winners and losers, between the 5% and the 95%. So here is the solution. Write down one definite goal. Put it on a small card. Carry it with you. Look at it each morning when you rise, each evening before you sleep, and as often as you can throughout the day. Let it dominate your thoughts. Let it serve as the compass of your mind. And each time your thoughts drift toward fear, toward doubt, toward resentment, bring them back to your goal. Replace weeds with wheat. Replace drifting with direction. Replace conformity with purpose. In time, your goal will shape your thoughts will shape your actions will shape your habits, and your habits will shape your destiny. And remember this, success is not the sudden arrival at some distant place. It is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. The moment you set a worthy goal and begin moving toward it, you are already successful. A teacher who sets her goal to inspire her students is a success, even before the first lesson is taught. A craftsman who sets his goal to master his trade is a success, even before the first work is complete. A business owner who sets his goal to serve his customers better than anyone else is a success, even before the first sale is made. For success is not measured in the applause of others or in the balance of a bank account. It is measured in the steady, daily progress toward a chosen, worthy goal. That is the direction that turns thought into reality, that turns potential into performance, that turns losers into winners. But even with a goal, even with direction, the work is not complete, for the mind must be trained, disciplined, and guarded each day. The weeds of fear and doubt will always try to creep back in. The pull of conformity will always try to drag you back to the 95%. That is why winners not only set goals, they discipline their minds to hold those goals, to guard against weeds, to persist in the face of obstacles, and it is in that discipline that the real separation between winners and losers is made. And that is what we must uncover next. Once you have set a definite goal, once you have given your mind direction, there still remains another factor that will decide how far you go and how much you gain. That factor is attitude. Your attitude toward yourself, toward your work, toward other people, and toward life itself will determine more than any single thing how life responds to you. For life is a mirror. It reflects back what you project. Approach it with gratitude, and it gives you more to be grateful for. Approach it with expectancy, and it delivers opportunities. Approach it with enthusiasm, and it multiplies your energy. But approach it with bitterness, and it gives you more reasons to be bitter. Approach it with resentment, and it confirms your complaints. Approach it with indifference, and it withholds its rewards. Life does not decide in advance who will succeed and who will fail. It simply reflects your attitude and returns it to you. Consider this. Two families move into the same town, into the same neighborhood. After a short time, one family says, "This is the friendliest place we've ever lived. People here are kind, open, welcoming." The other family says, "This is the coldest town we've ever seen. People here don't care, they're unfriendly, they keep to themselves." Now, how can both be right? The town has not changed, the people are the same. The difference is attitude. The first family smiled first, expected warmth, and found it. The second family waited for others to prove themselves, expected coldness, and found that. Life reflected back to each family the attitude they carried into it, and so it is with all of us. Now set the stakes clearly. If your attitude is poor, if you let resentment rule you, if you expect little and complain much, then you will live in constant frustration. You will wonder why nothing ever changes, never realizing that life is only reflecting what you are projecting. But if your attitude is one of gratitude, if you expect good things, if you treat others with respect, if you carry enthusiasm into your work, then you will discover opportunities opening, people helping, circumstances aligning. Success does not come by accident, it comes by reflection, and what life reflects is your own attitude. So, what is the solution? It is to take responsibility for your attitude each day. Do not leave it to chance. Do not wait to see how others treat you before you decide how you will treat them. Choose your attitude as carefully as you choose your clothes. Begin each morning by deciding, today I will be grateful, today I will expect good, today I will treat each person as important, today I will carry enthusiasm. And if you do this, you will find life mirroring those choices back to you day after day until success is not only possible but inevitable. Let me give you another picture. A man approaches his work with resentment. He sees it as drudgery, a burden to endure. He does only the minimum required, and even that with reluctance. His results are poor, his opportunities scarce, his rewards small. Another man approaches the same work with gratitude. He sees it as a chance to grow, to serve, to move toward his goal. He does more than is required, and he does it with enthusiasm. His results are excellent, his opportunities expand, his rewards increase. The difference between the two is not in the work, nor in the pay, nor in the circumstances. It is in attitude. So remember this: attitude is the magic word. It turns the ordinary into the extraordinary, the routine into the rewarding, the difficult into the possible. It is the outward reflection of the thoughts you have chosen to hold, and it is the thing life will always mirror back to you. Choose gratitude, expectancy, and enthusiasm, and life will open its treasures. Choose bitterness, complaint, and resentment, and life will close its doors. The choice is yours, and it must be made daily. But even with the right goal and the right attitude, another quality is needed, one rarer still, one that explains why so few ever rise above mediocrity. That quality is persistence, and it is persistence that we must uncover next. Now we come to the rarest quality of all, the one that explains more than anything else why so many begin with enthusiasm and so few ever finish with success. That quality is persistence. Anyone can begin. Anyone can feel the rush of excitement at the start of a new plan, a new resolution, a new dream. The first step is easy. The first day is simple. Even the first week can be managed by almost anyone. But what separates the winner from the loser, the 5% from the 95, is not how they start, it is how they continue. For the truth is this: the road to success is long, and along that road there are delays, obstacles, dry spells, seasons of discouragement. Most people stop. They give up when results are slow, when progress is invisible, when difficulties seem greater than the reward. They tell themselves it wasn't meant to be. They drift back into conformity, back into comfort, back into failure. And so they fail, not because they lacked talent or opportunity, but because they lacked persistence. Think of the farmer in springtime. He plants his seeds, waters them for a few days, and when nothing appears, he grows impatient. He digs them up to see if they're growing, shakes his head, and abandons the field. His harvest is nothing. Another farmer plants the same seeds, waters faithfully, weeds diligently, and though he sees nothing for weeks, he trusts the law of growth. He persists. He knows the work is happening unseen, beneath the soil, out of sight. And because he persists, the shoots appear, the stalks grow, and the harvest comes. The difference is not in the seed, nor in the soil, but in persistence. Success in life is no different. Results are invisible before they are visible. Progress happens quietly, beneath the surface, before it ever shows itself in the open. The man who persists understands this. He does not demand instant harvests. He does not abandon his goal when results are slow. He continues to think, to act, to believe, to serve, and in time, the harvest comes. The man who quits never sees it. He abandons the field before the season, and so he reaps nothing. Consider Thomas Edison, who failed 10,000 times before perfecting the electric light. 10,000 attempts, 10,000 setbacks, 10,000 reasons to quit, but he persisted. Each failure taught him something. Each mistake brought him closer. And at last, the light came. Today we take it for granted, but it exists because one man refused to quit. That is the power of persistence. Or think of Abraham Lincoln, who failed in business, who lost elections, who suffered defeat after defeat, yet persisted until at last he became one of the greatest leaders in history. His greatness was not in never failing, it was in never quitting. So, let me set the stakes. If you quit when the road is hard, if you give up when progress is slow, if you surrender when obstacles appear, then no goal, however worthy, will carry you to success. But if you persist, if you hold your goal steadily, if you keep planting, watering, believing, serving, then no obstacle, however great, can ultimately defeat you. For the harvest belongs to those who endure. This is why persistence is so rare. Most people do not expect difficulty. They imagine success will be quick, easy, comfortable, and when it is not, they stop. Winners understand that persistence is the price of success, and they pay it willingly. That is why they win. Losers refuse to pay, and that is why they fail. And now, having seen the qualities that keep winners on course, the attitude that mirrors life back to them, the persistence that carries them through, we must ask the final question: what is the true reward of all this effort? What do winners gain that losers never taste? And the answer is greater than money, greater than applause, greater than comfort. It is freedom and fulfillment, and that is where we must go next. And now we come to the true reward of all this discipline, all this direction, all this persistence. For the purpose of life is not simply to accumulate money, nor is it merely to survive another day. The real prize is freedom. The real prize is fulfillment. These are the rewards that winners know and losers never taste. Poverty is not just the absence of money, it is dependence, insecurity, bondage. It is the quiet fear that governs every decision, the constant worry of bills unpaid, of tomorrows uncertain, of needs unmet. Poverty is a chain that binds not only the hands, but the spirit. It forces a man to live in reaction rather than creation, to move always at the mercy of others instead of by the direction of his own mind. That is why poverty is not merely an economic condition, it is a spiritual one. Success, on the other hand, is freedom. It is the confidence of knowing that you are no longer bound by fear, no longer dependent upon the whims of others, no longer drifting with the crowd. It is the assurance that you are moving in a direction you have chosen, guided by thoughts you have planted, strengthened by persistence you have practiced. Success is the peace of mind that comes when you know you are living deliberately, when you know your days are adding up to something worthy, when you know that you have taken command of the one thing that separates winners from losers, your mind. That freedom is the first great reward, but freedom alone is not enough. For man was not created merely to escape dependence. He was created to serve, to contribute, to make life richer not only for himself but for others. And here lies the second great reward, fulfillment. For what joy is there in wealth without purpose? What peace is there in freedom without service? What satisfaction is there in living only for yourself? True fulfillment comes only when you take what you have gained, your knowledge, your skills, your energy, your freedom, and give it back in service to others. The teacher who inspires her students, the craftsman who pours himself into his work, the mother who raises her children with patience and love, these are successes every bit as real as the millionaire, for they are living deliberately, serving faithfully, contributing meaningfully. And this is what losers never discover. They chase comfort, they chase shortcuts, they chase what the crowd chases. And when they arrive, if they ever do, they find themselves empty. Winners, by contrast, discover that the true joy of life is not in getting, but in giving, not in drifting, but in directing, not in following, but in serving. And because they give more than they take, they always receive more than they need. So here is the final truth. The disciplined mind delivers two treasures, freedom and fulfillment. Freedom from fear, from dependence, from the trap of conformity. And fulfillment through service, through purpose, through the daily realization of a worthy ideal. This is the life of the winner. This is the reward of choosing your thoughts, setting your goal, guarding your mind, shaping your attitude, persisting in your course, and serving others along the way. And now, having seen the whole picture, it is time to gather all of this into one clear challenge so that you will never again drift with the 95% who fail, but instead will join the 5% who win. And now we have reached the end of this journey, and it is time to see the whole picture clearly, without illusion and without excuse. We began with a tragic statistic that out of every 100 men who set out in life at 25, by the time they reach 65, only 5 will have succeeded. The other 95 will have failed, and we asked why. Why, if each one began with hope, if each one believed he would succeed, do so few ever arrive? The answer is now plain. The 95 fail not by accident, not by fate, not by chance, but by law. They fail because they drift, because they conform, because they allow weeds to grow in the fertile soil of their minds. They fail because they never set a definite goal, never guarded their thoughts, never shaped their attitudes, never persisted when the way grew difficult. They fail quietly, gradually, almost invisibly, until the years are gone and the harvest is lost. That is why 95% always fail. But there is another side, a brighter side, a truth as certain as the other. For if failure is predictable, then so is success. Just as drifting leads inevitably to wreckage, so direction leads inevitably to arrival. Just as wrong thinking produces poverty, so right thinking produces wealth. Just as conformity produces failure, so courage produces freedom. And just as quitting produces nothing, so persistence produces the harvest. Success, like failure, is not an accident, it is a consequence. It is governed by law, the law that says we become what we think about. Winners know this law, they respect it, they live by it. Losers ignore it, and they pay the price. And so here's the truth I want you to carry with you. Your future is not decided by luck or fate or background. It is decided by the thoughts you allow to dominate your mind. Think deliberately, and you will succeed. Drift carelessly, and you will fail. Winners use their minds, losers neglect theirs. That is the difference, and it is the only difference that truly matters. Now let me give you one challenge, simple but powerful. Before this day ends, choose one clear goal for your life. Write it down. Carry it with you. Look at it every morning when you wake, every evening before you sleep, and as often as you can throughout the day. Let it dominate your thinking. Guard your mind against anything that does not serve it. Persist in it when results are slow. Serve others through it, and trust the law to do its work. If you do this, you will never again drift. You will never again envy others. You will never again wonder why some succeed and others fail. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And here is what comes next. In my next message, I will show you the one simple daily habit that keeps this law alive in your life, not for a week, not for a month, but for a lifetime. Most people never practice it, and that is why they slip back into drifting. But those who do make success inevitable. So begin now. Choose your goal. Guard your thoughts. Shape your attitude. Persist in your purpose. Serve with all your heart. And then join me in the next lesson, where I will show you how to keep this law working for you every day of your life. Remember this: we become what we think about. That is the power of the mind that separates winners from losers. Use it, and you will win. Neglect it, and you will fail. The choice is yours, and the time to choose is now.